We have Aviva Lund, who is our speaker today. Very outstanding young woman, well accomplished. She went to Notre Dame University in neuroscience. She's now working in OptimalWork at Harvard University, and one of the leading psychiatrists there, Dr. Kevin Majors. And what they're working on is maximizing performance in work life and brain capacity. And through her research laboratory and the work that she's doing in psychology, neuroscience, and philosophy, she's bringing the future now. So, Avia, come on up.
Thank you for being here today. Thank you for having me. It is such a dream for me to be here. For the past, let's say, maybe 5 or 6 years, I've really dreamt of diving more deeply into the international peacebuilding community and into areas of applied neuroscience to really help people maximize their brain capacity and resilience and an empathy. And so today I'm really excited to share with you some insights that we have gained at OptimalWork through the work that we do, and then to open up for questions to hear your guys' thoughts. First, I'd like to invite you to just pause for a second and imagine yourself taking on a daunting challenge. It could be rock climbing like this, or it could be work challenges, it could be life challenges, it could be a conflict between a family member, friends, or strangers. I want you to imagine yourself in that situation. So at OptimalWork, what we seek to do is to help people in the midst of those challenges maximize their resilience and empathy, their ability to take on the challenge with skill, with performance, and with confidence. And so I want to explain the science behind that. But before that, I'll explain my personal journey that led me here today. I would say that my journey to Rotary began in Jerusalem. So when I heard that I had Israeli friends here, how lovely. I am myself part Ashkenazi Jewish. And so I chose to study abroad in Jerusalem while studying neuroscience, just to explore my heritage, but to also get to know the Palestinian people as well, to get to know my Israeli background and the Palestinian people. So I studied at Hebrew University in Israel, Bethlehem University in Palestine, and then on Notre Dame's campus where I went to undergrad, right in between the two. And during my time there, I was really wrestling as a neuroscience pre-med major. How can I use neuroscience to help people? How can I use neuroscience to really serve above myself, beyond me? How can I bring this to the world? And I was working for a peacebuilding NGO, and that's when I realized that there was a direct link between the insights that neuroscience provides on our brain in the midst of challenge and conflict, and how we can open up people's brains to be more willing to enter into peace. Right. So I saw the initial connection, which is a story in itself. But the question I asked was, how can I make this into a movement? How can I make this into a method that can really help people globally? Right. Because I didn't see a lot of people talking about this, or no one was talking about this, at least at that point. So what did I do? I went back to Notre Dame. I finished my degree. And during my time, I also did some neuroscience research at NYU, doing mouse brain surgeries, trying to connect molecular neuroscience to behavioral, right? Trying to see the connection. And then I realized that we had to zoom out even further and include psychology and philosophy. So I was planning on getting 15 degrees to put all this together until I encountered Dr. Kevin Majors, who changed my life first. And then I realized I had to work for him. So Dr. Kevin Majors, brilliant man, amazing human, amazing soul. He is a leading anxiety expert at Harvard. He teaches at Harvard Medical School, runs his own clinic, and also founded OptimalWork, which takes his applied neuroscience, psychology, and philosophical insights to help people at their work performance, help them in general conflict, and in challenges they face across their lives. His thing is help people flourish through challenges, using neuroscience and psychology. So I knew this is the man I needed to learn from. I was amazed that he was already, at this point, taking my dream and spreading it across the face of the earth through companies and organizations, helping their productivity, helping their performance, helping their team dynamics. And then looking through all the feedback from people, it seemed like it also helped them in their personal lives, with whether it was family conflict, whether it was other forms of conflict with people. And so I saw this connection. I was like, okay, can we take this to international relations, right? And that's why I work for him, but I live in DC. I'm going to explain to you now the science behind his incredible work, how he's able to help people maximize their resilience and empathy. And there's multiple angles, but it comes back to the same point, the amygdala. So raise your hand if you heard of the amygdala. Yeah, at this point, everyone talks about these things, which is fantastic. It's very good. It's very insightful. The amygdala, for those who don't know what it is this little bean-sized thing in the brain that basically predicts whether you should avoid something. It is your stress center, right? So I'm going to explain how that works. So it detects threats. That's its job. Detect threats and help you either run away or perform at your best. It then sounds the alarm. So I'm going to take a step back for a second. I'm explaining the science to you, but I also want you to reflect on what this means and how you resonate with this when you're experiencing challenges in your life, right? And why is this important? Because I'm ultimately trying to show you how you can reshape your brain's response to challenges. And that's the key. And that's what I want to bring more into the peace building world, right? So the amygdala detects a threat and it sounds the alarm. What does the alarm sound like? There are multiple forms of experiencing it in your mind and in your body. But the primary, strongest form of experiencing the alarm is a tension in your chest. The tension in your chest. We'll come back to that, why that's important later. But just remember that. It sounds the alarm. And then, so it only watches for two things: approach and avoidance. Often when people are experiencing challenges, literally any challenge, whether it's athletic, whether it's musical, whether it's conflictive, whether it's performance, anything, the brain has the same response through the amygdala. And it does not understand language. So if you're affirming yourself, you're affirming others, that's helpful, right? But if you want to get to the key and unlock your brain, it's only watching for your behavior, whether you approach or avoid something. And that is how you shape your brain. Okay, so now let's see what happens when you avoid a challenge. I'm going to just do a really easy work example. You have a task coming up, right? But just remember, this applies to everything. Conflict, resilience, family, running your company, it's all the same. For unlocking your brain. Now, this is going to lock your brain, right? So when you avoid a challenge, let's say like procrastinating on a task that you know you should get done, your anxiety is going up, and then you decide not to do it. Every time you return to the same situation, your anxiety and stress is going to be worse than the time before it. So I'm just showing this as what happens when you avoid. Now, people think that anxiety and stress kills. That's not entirely true. What kills is when you experience anxiety and you don't let the natural bodily process happen. So anxiety is actually meant to help you physically run. It sends adrenaline to your body so that you can run away from a challenge. And that is a good thing if you have a lion chasing you or if you're literally in physical danger, right? That is good. But there is control for you to move that adrenaline from your body back to your mind so that you can be more empathic and more resilient. This is what happens when you approach a challenge. The anxiety and stress get worse before it gets better. Now, I'm going to just name a worst case example. If you know anyone who's had a panic attack, it is a horrible thing, right? That's where basically your anxiety is so high that it's just unbearable. And often people try to control that process, right? But the more you try to control a panic attack, the longer it stays peaked. And this is a wild thing about emotion in the brain. You can't control it, but you can make it worse. The only thing that allows an emotion to process through is watching it happen, which is wild. And that's a way you can actually control for next time. If you want to modulate your amygdala's response to stress, let the stress peak and pass. And we'll explain how to do that deliberately in time. But this is what happens. It peaks, and if you do nothing, it drops. And the brain listens. Do you remember that the slide that showed approach versus avoidance? When you approach, it decreases the stress response next time. And think about that in peace and conflict, right? When people just approach a scary situation of someone they are not friends with, or a difficult task or a difficult challenge or rock climbing, it's terrifying. And as you're approaching it, it gets worse. That feeling of stress and terror. But then when you just lean into it, it suddenly melts away and it actually works for you. Every time you're in that same situation, like I said before, your stress and anxiety will go lower and lower and lower until it's gone. So that is how to reshape your brain's response to stress. Simply put, we'll add layers to this, but that is the simply put way of responding. I mentioned this before, but here's an image to show it. When you avoid a challenge, that's you telling your brain, I need to physically run. And it'll send all your adrenaline to your body, and that'll help you physically run. But here's what happens when you're approaching, say, a conflict with a person. What else can you do with your muscles? Violence. Exactly. So I'm going to explain what it means to retrain your brain to send that adrenaline right back to the brain, right? But if you need to physically run, again, that's great. Use it. But most of us are not in that case most of the time. So we're going to talk about what it means to really approach challenge and how that reshapes your brain. So these are the 3 skills that Dr. Majors has crystallized over his decades of work and research. This combines cognitive behavioral therapy, acceptance commitment therapy, so that's psychology, an understanding of the neuroscience of the amygdala and the dynorphin effect, which I'll explain in a bit, and then the philosophy of virtue ethics, basically. How can you actually let your ideals drive your growth and your response to challenges? And it turns out, I don't know if you noticed, there was one point where, as we were scrolling, the word flow passed through. I decided to let that go for a second. Flow is the state where your brain is maximally intelligent, creative, present, socially intelligent, basically all the things you could ever want, right? And you see that when athletes are at their peak performance. CEOs are just doing their best job and leading their organizations with vision and with action, in an effortless conversation, in a conflict that becomes peaceful and deepens a bond. And what's interesting about the flow state, often we think that our good days in performance or in kindness, they just happen to us. But it turns out that you can actually activate it on command through these 3 steps that combine the psychology, the neuroscience, and the philosophy of activating your ideals through challenge. So reframing is about mastering your attitude and asking the question, how is this challenge an opportunity to grow in skills, ideals, and bonds? And the beauty of that is that it works in every situation and it unlocks your prefrontal cortex. Mindfulness, I'm sure many of you have heard of it, if not all of you, it's just a matter of being in the present moment and paying attention to the tension in your chest. And when you breathe through that, it actually sends a signal back to your brain to modulate your stress response next time. And it helps you channel the adrenaline through your brain as noradrenaline. And then challenge is the easiest part. Well, in some ways, that's just a matter of breaking down the challenge into a series of steps. Whether you're working, you could just make steps, a list, or whether you're about to approach a difficult conversation and think about how you want to approach it. That teaches the brain how to literally respond to whatever you're facing, right? The brain needs steps. It needs literal steps. And if you don't give it to the brain will give you your fear response or distractions. So being deliberate is incredibly important. The golden hour is a tool that we provide to help people apply this principle of entering productivity, performance, activating your ideals on command. It's fantastic. Just uses the reframing, mindfulness, and challenge while you're working. So last part is, how do we really approach this in difficult conversations? What does it mean to experience flow, maximal brain capacity in conflict? I could talk about this for hours, right? So I'm only going to give you a brief look, and if you have questions, I can explain more. The dynorphin effect, I think, is probably the most powerful way of responding to this question. When you approach conflict or any challenge, you'll experience a dip in dopamine, and it sucks. But if you sit with it and drink it in, this image that Dr. Major says is very helpful. Drink it like wine. Drink the disgust, the ick, the fear. Drink it like wine. Look what happens. Your dopamine peaks, and then suddenly you're in the challenge, willing to take it on, and your dopamine finishes at a higher baseline level. So dynorphins, it's a relatively new area of research in neuroscience, but this is a finding that we've seen in studies. And then 3 simple things, and this also is a course in itself, but it's going to make a lot of sense for you guys, especially those of you who work in peace and are, well, living humans. The ordering of approaching difficult conversations that we recommend through the science of mentoring is being understanding first, then encouraging, and then practical. So a whole course in itself, but I'm just trying to show interesting ideas that we have found through our work, and I can answer questions as they come. So this is yet a personal story again. This painting is in the dining room, or in between the dining room and living room of my house, in the house that I grew up in. And it's such a funny painting. What is this man doing? Like, look at him. There's this beautiful landscape of the sky, and whether it's a sunrise or sunset, I don't know, but it's just beautiful. And he's there looking at a rock. So I've always loved this image, and my mother would mention it much, where she was like, in life, challenges come kind of like those stones. And if we get too hyper-focused on the stone itself, we forget about the landscape, right? And so a part of the reframing, it's not saying, oh, everything's great, everything is fine, this challenge is whatever. It's a matter of just taking a step back and putting things into perspective and specifically asking yourself, how can I grow in a skill through this? How can I practice my ideals through this? And how can I serve others better? And when you ask those questions, it actually activates all the right brain regions to enter the flow state. This basically summarizes both what I said, but also provides some practical advice if you want to take any. So just to remember, we saw that peak in that that drop in that peak in dopamine in response to dynorphins. Again, dynorphins are a signal that of the unbearable challenge. That feeling that is unbearable is dynorphins flowing in your brain, right? But what we teach people is that it's a signal for growth. It's an invitation to stretch yourself, right? And you can shape that by willingly taking on whatever is in front of you, drinking it like wine, and then including ideals. That's what activates your intelligence and sociability when you put ideals directly into what you're doing. And what do we mean by ideals? It could be patience, being encouraging, being perseverant, humility, service, love, all those things. Magnanimity is one of our favorites. And to increase resilience, practice reframing, mindfulness, and challenge. We have a whole podcast, a whole platform. So if you forget these things, I guess this is being recorded too, you'll have access to all of it. But those 3 psychological skills backed by neuroscience consistently help you stretch yourself, maximize performance, lead your teams. It's just good. It's the fundamental human behavioral tools and skills to flourishing through challenge. And then to increase empathy, we like to call these practices dynorphin workouts, where you actually seek out the discomfort of growth through a cold shower, fasting, exercise, and then small sacrifices. For example, let them come to you. Maybe someone is clicking their pen like crazy and you want to kill them, jokingly. Just drinking in those dynorphin waves, because they come in waves, actually strengthens your resilience and your empathy immediately, which is really cool. So there's just some practical things that you guys could take away. We do workshops, and we have our app and hours upon hours of different ways of teaching people all the things that this applies to, and how to implement it in organizations or just for groups or individuals. But yeah, that's a little bit about how your brain works and how you can shape it to be more resilient and empathic. With that, does anyone have questions?
Thank you very much for a fantastic presentation. My question has to do, going back to anxiety. It seems as if, from my perspective, there seems to be more anxiety than ever, especially among younger generations. And I don't know if you have any insights as to what might be causing it, or any thoughts on that line.
Oh, that is a packed question. I'm sure everyone else in the room could answer better than I could. But I think that the core, just psychologically and like neuroscientifically speaking, we are teaching young people how to avoid challenge. Anytime they're stressed out, run away, lock people out of your life. This person's bothering you, get them out. I mean, look at our affective polarization. I think the fact that we're encouraging people to block out anything that makes them uncomfortable, I think that is the primary cause, psychologically speaking. Beyond that, obviously, there's other things. The fact that social media can really isolate people, that everyone is so busy that you don't have family dinners anymore, that we're not teaching young people to have ideals and be service-oriented as the way of finding happiness, as opposed to just doing what they feel like. We could have a whole freaking conference on this. But I would say, psychologically speaking, we have to teach young people that even anxiety itself is an opportunity to grow and to become the person they want to be and to serve others. And that's one of the quickest fixes to anxiety, is service. Because that's where we literally, the oxytocin is released. We expand beyond ourselves to just give ourselves in relationship. And it turns out the brain is motivated by relationship. That drives everything. And so that's actually one of the strongest ideals, love and service, to get people to go from anxiety to calm. And Dr. Majors, he's so brilliant. He can do this for someone in one session, like on the clinical side. It's unbelievable. So that's just a little bit of an answer, but I'd love to talk more. There's so much to this. The OptimalWork podcast. So our two founders, Dr. Kevin Majors and Sharif Yunus, they run it together. It's fantastic. There's even actually a whole series on parenting, 7 episodes on optimal parenting based on all the best studies. I'm not even a parent. I was just soaking this in. And actually something that Dr. Majors says is that scientifically speaking, there's no difference between, from the psychological side, accompanying a friend, leading a team, raising your children. It's all the same. It's the same science, which is he didn't even realize that until families started coming to him saying, "You saved my marriage and helped me raise my kids. Thanks."
Thank you very much. I learned a lot about anxiety today. Anxiety is the motor to learning, is what I was always taught. Yeah, and so that was a principle that I embrace. You talked about avoidance. Are you telling me I should be watching Fox News?
Maybe Fox News is an avoidance of everything else.
Well, I got to watch it to find out. But anyway, I'm interested in multiplying the number of individuals involved and extending those to nations, because I deal with international politics, negotiations toward peace, towards disarmament, towards international development, things of that sort. It's not a matter of changing one person. It's a matter of changing a whole system on the other side.
Yeah.
And I wanted you to tell me the principles that I need to use to teach diplomats how to break through to the other side when they're dealing not with just other individuals, but nation states that have their own interests and that are imposing those on the people who represent them.
Yep. Okay. Wow. What a question. So as a just a preface really quickly, this is not yet my specialty, exactly what you're saying. I hope it will be one day, but I can pull something that might be helpful. When we teach people how to mentor and lead others or accompany others, affirmation is not the answer. It's helpful as a side thing, right? But the way to cut into someone's heart and mind so that they feel seen and they trust you is to be able to repeat back to them and figure out what is the most burning challenge they're experiencing. You don't even have to give them an answer. So I think a part of persuading people, right, is gaining their trust so that they actually listen to what you have to say and resonate with it. If you can frame it from the perspective of their deepest burning challenge, and that's where understanding first helps with that, then that's where they lock in. Because they feel seen. This happens by accident sometimes. Just like listening to someone, asking them questions, and try to understand their challenge, and then they explain it to me, and I'm like, oh, okay. So then I repeat it back to them in the way I understand, try to see what's most difficult about it. And they're like, please, just do anything. And I was like, well, we only just discussed your challenge. But that's one insight I would say that helps to really get to resonating deeply with people. Beyond that, honestly, I'm just starting in this area. Right now, what we're providing is how to unlock the brain, bringing it to such a massive, high level. That's what I want to spend the rest of my life figuring out. But we knew how to resonate with individuals and smaller groups. Yeah, I'd love to chat more.
I have a question. It's along the same lines. Desire. These days, if you don't have the desire to challenge the avoidance, you can just, watch a reel on your phone and just tune out. So could you discuss types of incentives or currency that can be provided to create a desire to challenge?
That's an incredibly big question. Give me one example that really resonates when you ask that. What's one example you really want to see that in? Just because a lot of it's context dependent, and the more general the answer, the less useful it is. So
I guess in relationship to my son, right?
Right.
I'd love for him to be more proactive with certain things. Maybe it has to do with his sleep schedule or whatever.
Right.
But that it could be my significant other, and watching a TV show and she's, doing reels before we actually start. But whatever it might be, I just think that there's a reason that, and those are minor things, but there's a reason why people will choose to back away because it's so simple nowadays.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you guys have thought about currency or incentives that can help people think differently, or at least approach something maybe every once in a while more aggressively.
See, the challenge isn't giving an answer, it's more so limiting it. Especially with the neuroscience, you can get really stuck in the weeds. So I'll answer your question first, and if the other things I thought of feel relevant, I'll mention them too. Is a part of the question apathy before I answer, or no? Because those are the people I have the hardest time understanding. Have you heard of the rat park experiments? So rat park experiments, I learned about this while I was studying neuroscience, and it just blew my mind. It blew my mind. But it comes with a simple answer, but I think it really paints the picture well to be relevant to what you're asking. Rat park experiments. So previously with addiction, it was the primary narrative behind it was the dopamine theory of addiction, which is the idea that, oh, you put rats in a cage, you give them cocaine, they have dopamine, they want to do it again until they die. And then there was a scientist whose name I don't recall, who thought differently. He or she thought, the rat is a social animal, and it's put alone in a cage with boring food, water, and cocaine. I mean, why wouldn't it choose cocaine? So instead, in this experiment, they put the rat in a park. They call it the rat park. And they gave it friends. It was a male rat. They gave it female rats. They gave it toys, great food, and cocaine. And it had the cocaine, and it never got addicted. Isn't that wild? So the insight that came from that is that addiction is not so simple. A lot of the time, I'm Gen Z. As a Gen Z person, I consistently struggle with the same question myself. I'm like, why did I spend so much time on the reels? What am I doing with my life? I'm wasting it away. And I tried brute force discipline. And it worked until it didn't. But what's been helping me these days as I continue to struggle is a higher motivation. And as a recovering self-sufficient person, like an individualist, let's just say, which is a lie in itself. Anyway, I learned that the primary motivator is relationship and time. It's kind of stupidly true. And so I think just spending time with your son, apathetic people, I can't figure them out. But when you spend time with them and figure out, when it comes to avoidance, according to Dr. Majors, because I've wrestled with him about apathy for a while. I'm not saying your son is, I'm just now referencing that. With apathy, it's motivated by avoiding a pain and figuring out what that pain is and providing love in that space for the person and inviting them to then desire bigger and better, and to give them that growth trajectory, show them how to get there. Basically, mentoring and just quality time and play goes a long way. Basically, giving them something better than little dopamine rushes. And so for me, what has happened in my life, and this is not rocket science, it's simple, but it's been helpful for me and my friends and my family. Figuring out who's the person I want to be and what does it take to get there, and who are the people and mentors and friends that I should surround myself with, and how can I serve better. So I've been getting more involved in community service. I've been deepening my relationship with my family and my grandparents and my friends and trying to see how I can mentor people, and then read books that sound really interesting. And then suddenly there's no time. There's no time to be on the reels all the time. And I've gotten more into meditation and silence, the power of silence. Whoa. Yeah, we have talks on silence alone, and mindfulness is a part of that. It provides no direction, but it makes a space for it. So with you with that, but yeah, that's kind of a bit of what I've gathered from Dr. Majors in his work, and then also from the rat park experiments.
Loved your presentation.
Thanks.
In a past life, I led trust and safety and customer experience at the largest online streaming platform pretty much in the US. And we really saw that social media, when you talk about reels or posting and just in integration methods, we're really changing behavioral patterns in individuals. And we tried our best to kind of like combat that and do different things. But currently with my current company, I spend a lot of time working with different governments in Africa and across the GCC. And there's this big challenge of 60% of their population being the youth, and trying to figure out how do we look at developing new shared aspirational values when you have social media platforms that are kind of repatterning behavior patterns at such an excessive speed. So how do you think about that? Because I know OptimalWork works with corporations, but when you think about these shared aspirational values that are shifting so quickly, how do you think about that challenge?
Let me repeat your question, because that's, wow, all you guys have incredible questions, incredibly difficult questions. So you're basically asking I'm asking you to confirm, how can you build a culture around shared ideals when technology is changing those shared ideals and fragmenting ideals constantly? Easy question. So like every other question today, I said tonight, it is not tonight. Ultimately, we have to figure that out together, right? But I think this goes to a more philosophical question of whether there are universal ideals. Are there ideals that all humans share? So that's a difficult thing. So we do have our answer to that, right? And it turns out it's working really well. But I just want to be respectful of the fact that not everyone believes that there are universal ideals. We believe that virtue ethics helps with that, like being magnanimous. Okay, whoa. Magnanimity, being magnanimous. Magnanimous. There we go. We got there eventually. That's something all humans can do. I mean, forget philosophers, forget political orientation. Like, it works. Being patient, being perseverant, love and service, sacrificing yourself for the growth of someone else. It's not a scientific question, but the science supports that there are universal ideals. There are ideals that when lived, your brain flourishes, it grows, you bond with people better. So I think which ideals resonate most in different cultures, I think that's something that a table discussion could bring out depending on what the culture values and what leads to that culture's flourishing. I'm a Jewish Christian, Danish, Ecuadorian. There's a lot in my family. So it's not surprising I'm in the peacebuilding community now. But me and Jesus. So yeah, as a Christian, as a Catholic Christian, and I'm adding more words to it, that believes that there's truth and goodness across all traditions, right? I do believe that like self-sacrificing love, as in the Christian tradition, we see that as Christ on the cross. He had everything, all the power in the world, and he gave it up in the most embarrassing form possible. And we see that in different traditions too. And being willing to do that through your family, through your neighbors, and to start small with what's right next to you. I mean, that's something that's tangible. And so there's so much more to it, but it's in our time of differences in understanding of like what the ultimate truth and ideals are in reality, it's not so easy to answer that question while having reverence for different opinions, if that makes sense.
A quick question. So this is an easy one.
Okay.
Talk about relationships.
Oh, what kinds?
Married relationships,
Okay.
Men and women. I have been married 3 times and I've been divorced 3 times. I have reserved the time that says I've taken the baseball metaphor on three strikes, I'm out. My girlfriend currently doesn't like that because she says, so my point is I've tried to live by these is it the truth? Is it fair? Is it better for everybody? Is it fair to all concerned? In all 3 marriages, I've failed. I've never been able to do all 4 of those in those. And I've been in Rotary over 30 years. So, and so this is an easy question. So my question is, how do you get somebody's trust back? How do you win somebody's trust after you've lied to them? How's that?
As a believer in God, help me. Ooh, how do you get someone's trust back when you lied to them? Oh my goodness. Okay, so again, let's remember my hidden age that is somewhat visible here, but this is what I'm saying. So I almost want to return the question back to you, but I presume you're asking from the side of science and so on. So what I can say there is, goodness, there's so many contexts, but as a love to discuss more after. We have similar things that run in our family as well. It takes 4 seconds in a conversation of silence, or in a conversation, to be in silence to start building immediate trust. If you're listening to someone and then you wait, and as an extrovert, I don't do this often enough, but if you wait 4 seconds in silence as someone is talking, that's when it starts getting uncomfortable, but that's also when the bond starts developing immediately. And then I guess the second thing I thought of is, I guess in reparations, just doing the opposite, being present and being the opposite of whatever the lie was. But it's so much more complex than that. I could not do justice to the challenge, and also enough reverence given my lack of life experience. But yeah, I think the power of silence goes a long way in a conversation. It's shocking. 4 seconds.
Give you some advice, Max. 37 years of marriage. Say yes. This is a certificate where you're going to get a tree planted in your name around the tidal basins. And it's literally providing shade for others, if you really look at it. And the coordinates will come to you later. But this is your certificate that you can hang on the wall next to your 14 degrees. All right.